I have the rough draft. It's supposed to be 100,000 words until I got this little sinus problem. I was on track. I think I have 80,000 written. But there's a chapter 3 called Nietzsche and Trump. Anything that doesn't kill me makes me stronger. And I go through all the things they did to him. The January 6 distortions, the second impeachment, Senate trial when he was a private citizen, the 25 states that tried to deballot him, the crazy Mar-a-Lago raid, the lawfare, four courtroom indictments, 93 particular indictments. And then there was the E. Jean Carroll farce, and then the 2 assassination attempts. I go through it all. And I don't want to, I've met him and I like him and I've talked to him, but it's not an insider like the Biden books where they interview people. I'm trying to be distant as a historian and just analyze what we're at. We're in a counter-revolution, and he didn't make the choice. One of the theme of the books is he didn't even do a Reagan or a George H.W. Bush or George W. Bush. Incrementalism. Reagan did a lot with tax cuts. But the second, he didn't do what he did the first. He said the country is at a precipice and there is no border, and we have a revolution with 30 million illegal aliens, and there is a raging war with a nuclear power, and we're arming a proxy in Ukraine, and after October 7th the Middle East is blown up, and we're 37 trillion in debt. We're borrowing 3 billion in interest a day, and we have a $2 trillion deficit, and we have a $1 trillion trade deficit, and our allies are not really our allies in some ways. We're spending an inordinate amount defending them, and they're running up. So he had all that, and the answer was, hey, Don, it's called musical chairs if you're a Republican. Only 4 times in the last 100 years has the Republicans controlled the House, the Senate, and the presidency. And he did it the first term for 2 years. Now he has a second chance. But I thought, a lot of people thought he'd play musical chairs. Hi, everybody, I'm Donald Trump. I extended the tax cuts. I'm deregulating. But he wouldn't go after Harvard, or he wouldn't go after transgendered athletes, or he wouldn't try to expel 500,000 criminal illegal alien, because the music would cut off and you don't have a seat in musical chairs. And it's dangerous. So he just wanted to stay. Usually a Republican president stays right next to that seat, and they're walking around and there's not enough seats, and you grab it and you just survive, because they have this formidable cultural apparatus. As I said, the media, but he just said, he's kind of coy. He said during the campaign, I'm going to do this and do this. But then he just, in the first 100 days, it was like Napoleon's return to, from Elba, the 100 days. It was like, okay, we're going to wage war and cut government. We're going to deal with DEI, woke, transgendered guys and girls sports. We'll close the border. We'll find the illegal aliens. We'll solve the Ukraine war. We'll denuclearize Iran. We'll make sure that Panama knows that canal and us and them are a bundle, and China's not going to interfere. We're going to look at Greenland, get that place armed and secure, and we're going to deal with our buddies, the Canadians. And oh my gosh! And this is in addition to deregulate, tax cut, this normal stuff. So it was a counter-revolution that we've never, ever seen before. And when you have every counter-revolutionary trying to stamp out Jacobinism, they're kind of like the Thermidors. People sound off. They're not on the same page. And every time any little slip, it was, oh my gosh, Donald Trump did this or that. The price of eggs was up. We're dead. We can't afford Easter eggs and that kind of hysteria. And there was no counter effort, counter-reform. There wasn't like, okay, we're the Democratic Party, I'm Dick Durbin, and I'm Chuck Schumer, and I'm Nancy Pelosi, and we're kind of a shadow government, and we suggest that we have an alternative called comprehensive information. Here it is, points 1, 2, 3. As far as cutting, we did it under Bill Clinton very successfully. Our party was the only one to balance the budget for 4 years and 40 years. So here's what we're going to do. Point A, B, C, D. And as far as Ukraine war, Biden was kind of, lax. But here we have a 5-point plan to end it. They didn't do any of that, and said it was kickboxing and Spartacus, 25 hours of Spartacus, and Carmelo Anthony is a victim. He's a folk hero. He's our next George Floyd. Go fund him. And Luigi Mangione is a noble assassin who's shooting at Hitler-like people. And Mahmoud Khalil, he's not the October 7th cheerleader. He's a wonderful guy we've got his poor Gazans are being terrorized. And then Mr. Abrego Garcia, he might be a little wife beating here and there, mussed his hair up a little bit, trafficking, kind of got carried away with those tattoos on his, fingers. That crap happens, and made a mistake when that picture with his short sleeve shirt and showed all of his gang-related tattoos. And of course, every once in a while, you slap around your spouse. Everybody does that. You get a little carried away, but he's a folk hero. So that's who they're doing. They're taking the most reprehensible people and they're making them into heroes.
And they're not winning. So they have a new plan, Victor. It's called
They're not
Dark
winning, but
Woke.
what's happening is everybody should, a word of warning. The Democratic Party has gone from a historic low of 29% approval to a historic low of 27 to 23 in one poll. And everybody says, well, they can't win the midterms if it's 23. Yes, they can, because that's the party generic poll. But if they drive Donald Trump, Donald Trump is still in reliable polls about 51%. Maybe the real clear is below that, but that's because of the inflated left-wing poll. If they get him down to 40%, you're going to see people next September during the break, they're going to distance themselves from Trump, and that can't happen. So that's their strategy, to just scream and yell and throw stuff like a tantrum and be anarchist and just make so much chaos that the American people, as a proverbial, what was the guy's name in True Romance that said that I can't take this
Elliot.
Elliot, yeah,
in the
Elliot.
elevator.
He just puts his hands up. I can't take this anymore. I can't take this anymore. Get into a fetal position.
Yeah.
Let me out of this. I didn't mean it. And we don't want that to happen. So you got to be careful. Don't underestimate what the capabilities are.
No.
And I can't believe, when Jeremy Raskin, a representative of the House of Representatives, tells foreign governments, beware, you're working with Donald Trump and we're going to come back in power. That's almost treasonous. Gosh, if a Republican said that during the Biden, they went over and said, hey, if you work with Obama, when we're going to get in, you're going to be punished. Can't do that. But that's what they're doing. They're doing anything. I've never imagined this party would ever do that. I grew up in a Democratic Party.
They're making a lot of mistakes.
Yeah,
but I was going to get to the one that this week they're making, which is, they call it dark woke, that they are going to cultivate this new attitude that's provocative and towing the line of being offensive. And I think they're just trying to keep their young base. I can't see anything else that they're trying to do.
The problem is that they're conflating two issues, and one is youth and charisma and policy. So they're saying that AOC and Jasmine Crockett, I was driving today and she was bragging about you have to be spontaneous and not talk about policy. And even when you say stupid things like Trump's an M13 or something, it gets attention. That's true. And they are sort of funny and entertainers, but they're on a 2080 side of the issues. Donald Trump won not just because he did the hamburger stunt and the garbage truck stuff, and he was charismatic, but he wouldn't have won unless he had 70% margins on fiscal discipline, restoration of deterrence, stop crime, close the border, deport, right? Everybody was behind transgender. He just looked at those issues, and I can just imagine him. He's at Mar-a-Lago, and he says, I got to get a bunch of issues for my next rally. He says to Susie Wiles, Susie, come back in an hour and tell me what the polls are on all these, because this is what I believe. And she comes back and says, you're very lucky. You sincerely believe this, and you're polling 80%, 70%. And I'm sure there were some things that were closer, but that's what they're making the mistake. They think this young group, because they're qua young, they're going to appeal to people, and they're charismatic because AOC can hop around in her jeans on the stage, and it's not going to work and they can't. A couple of last thoughts. Kamala Harris lost the presidency not because she moved. She tried to move to the center. Remember, she said she's no longer a fracker, and she didn't like males in women's sports. Nobody believed her. She tried, but she couldn't feign that she was an independent thinker and could appeal to independents and conservative Democrats. They think she lost because she wasn't screaming and yelling about reparations and the new green. As she had done that, she would have lost by 10 points. And so they don't get that. And then there's a final thing that's very controversial. I want to be very careful how I state it. But given what we saw with Josh Shapiro when if he had run as vice president, I'm not a big fan of Josh Shapiro, everybody, so I'm not trying to laud him or anything. But my point is this: had he run as vice president, he might have won Pennsylvania. I think they would have, and they could have got closer. I don't know if they would have won the election, but they would have got closer. But they didn't pick him because he was Jewish, and they knew that would offend the hardcore Jasmine Crockett, Tlaib group and AOC. And then this second thing, he was pro-Israel, and you can't be pro-Israel in the new Democratic Party. But here's my point. For a quarter century, the doyens of the Democratic Party were sort of the Jewish liberals that came out of the 60s and 70s, and they had good relations with independents, sometimes with Republicans. I'm talking about Chuck Schumer, Dick Durbin. Dick Durbin's he just announced he's not going to run again from Illinois as senator. And now why is that? Because that David Hogg probably is, and all these crazy people are going to have somebody run against him in Illinois, which is probably to the left of him even. And Chuck Schumer is not going to be senator next time. He's probably going to bow out because he'll be humiliated in the primary unless he can really run a nasty, dirty campaign, which is justifiable because she can be a nasty, dirty person. And we'll see if he does that, but I doubt he's up to it.
Who is he running against?
AOC.
Oh, okay.
So my point is that what we saw with the Democratic Party was there was an element of Jewish intellectuals and lawyers, and some of them, like Jeremy Raskin, are trying to I don't know, consort with the hard left. But this is an anti-Semitic party, and they hate Israel. And there's no place for any of those people in that party. And I think the 3 or 4 million Jewish Americans are going to realize that. It's kind of a nasty little streak that they're not little. And I just can't imagine when I see Tlaib and the Squad and the type of people that are in the news on the left, David Hogg, I just can't imagine them ever allowing a leadership position in their party to be held by a liberal, pro-Israel Jewish person. I really can't. And that's a subtext that nobody wants to talk about, but it is an anti-Semitic party. The only one who seems to know that is Fetterman in that party.
Yeah, he seems the
Dianne Feinstein, I don't think would be. She was elected in California, but she had been an older brand, but she was very pro-Israel. But I can't imagine a Jewish liberal being elected in California, not with these crazy people.
Well, since you spoke of David Hogg, he is a vice chair of the Democratic National Committee, and he is apparently has an organization called Leaders We Deserve. He's a very young kid. He's 24, 25 or something. I don't know, very young. And he's going to try to primary people against Democrats in many of the incumbents. And he's threatened that recently this last week against it. And so he's...
Yeah, it doesn't work.
Who is he, though? I mean, what is this?
He was a survivor, not a survivor. I mean, he was one person that was at this big shootout. This
in Florida or something?
Yes, in Florida.
Yeah,
and then he became an anti-gun spokesman. He was only 17 or 18, and then he went on to Fox News. I mean, he's kind of erratic. He said he was going to put Mike Lindell out of business. Remember, he was going to have an alternate pillow company. Poor Mike Lindell is out of business anyway, almost. So he has an ability to raise money, but he's in this little tit for tat with James Carville, because James Carville's an old cynic. I'm not a big fan of his, but he looked at the Republican Party, to take one example, and he said, you know what, after the Tea Party, they thought the Tea Party was going to win, and they started to primary people, and they got the most extreme candidate, and they didn't take the Senate in 2010, and they didn't really get the Senate back until they got candidates that were both charismatic on the right side of all the issues, percentage-wise. And he's saying that anytime a party gets into this puritanical streak, that you have to be absolutely pure on all the issues, and extreme, you don't win. And the worst thing you can do historically is to primary an old ossified stalwart that gets elected every year in a purple district. The better strategy is to say, this guy is with us 70% of the time, but he's an opportunist because he has to be, because he won't get elected. The Republicans, Murkowski in Alaska or somebody like that, or in states like Maine, they make allowances. They just say these people are in a purple state, because Alaska can be purple, or they have that ranked voting, and we just sort of let them be renegades on 30 or 40%. And the Democrats don't do that.
No,
they'll primary them, and they will get a crazy squad-like candidate, and they will. I hope they do, because they'll lose. And so, Al Gore. Did you see Al Gore came back in the news?
Yes, I did, in a big way that was ugly, as Al Gore always is. But
what I liked about it was he gave a little preamble before he called Trump Hitler. It was like this pseudo-intellectual thing that the ad Hitlerium reductionism is always bad. It's kind of bad when I'm not accustomed to calling people Hitler, and it's kind of bad, but he is. And I thought, not accustomed? You? No. In the 2000 election, when you lost and you were so embittered because you won the popular vote, as soon as George Bush became controversial in the Iraq War, what did you do? You called him a digital brown shirt. You said that he was basically a fascist. You and John Glenn, you. So all you're doing, Al Gore, is just returning to form. You did that with Bush. And we know what you guys do on the left. Every time, as I've said, and everybody's pointed this out, when there's a Republican president, he's Hitler. And then when the next guy takes over, the old Hitler becomes Churchill, because the new guy is the new Hitler. And so George W. Bush was hated as Hitler. And now when Trump took over, then he was Churchill. And he was painting, and he was nice, and he was an independent. And now Trump is Hitler. And that was the same thing with Reagan. Reagan was Hitler. Then George H.W. came in, and they said, wow, we hate George H. He's a wimp. He's whiny. He's got that crazy Lee Atwater working for him, the Willie Horton ad. Reagan was statesmanlike. He was a senior statesman. And then George H.W. Bush was Hitler, and it worked, and we got rid of Hitler, and now we've got W. Oh my gosh, I wish we had George H.W. Bush. He was a nonpartisan, he was senior, he was calm, he didn't have that grating Southern accent. He's a World War II hero, shot down in the Pacific, heroic guy. And W, he's a Christian fanatic, digital branch. And now George Bush is sober and judicious. So patently obvious and hypocritical.
it sure is.
Can I say one more hypocrisy before I end? Have you noticed that There's an irony that the people who warped the law now are respecting the Constitution. The people who went to the doors of the Supreme Court and threatened them, as we mentioned, Schumer, or they thronged their homes. That's ironic that they're saying that we have to respect the Supreme Court has ruled against Donald Trump when they said he should facilitate his return. But there's another one that's really strange, and I think I mentioned that. They always talk about imperialism and colonialism. So they go now, they're traipsing down to El Salvador, like Yankees, spelled Q-U-I in the end. Yankee, 19th century, gunboat diplomacy, steal the Panama, whatever they think they're doing. And they go to this El Salvadorian country and they say, we're now Americanos.
Give us your
Buenos
man back.
Americanos. And we tell you, Mr. El Salvadorians, that we are on your soil and you're a protectorate of the United States. So this is what you are going to do on your soil with your citizens according to your law. We want him back. You send him. And they said, but he's our citizen. He's not yours. We don't send people, and we have rules about gang activities and associations. And before he even left, we thought he was associated with gangs, and now we know he is. And he's got proof all over his body. So according to our statutes, we're going to put him in our prison. You can't do that, you little tin-horn dictator. We're the United States of America. Bully us. It's so funny to see these little weakling Democrats go down there and act like 19th century imperialists and start ordering the Salvadorians all around. I feel sorry for the Salvadorians. That's why they kind of snuck those margaritas in there on that picture. That's an ugly American. Isn't it funny? They're all ugly American. They get on TV and brag they went down to El Salvador. I thought, yeah, you went down there and ordered a sovereign nation to do what you want to do to one of their citizens who's not one of your citizens, and you wanted them to violate their laws and their protocols. And then you thought because you were a Yankee that they would listen to you. They just criticized Donald Trump for being an imperialist, for telling the Panamanians, get the Chinese out of the entry and the exit of Panama. I'd rather die on that altar of saving the Panama Canal from the Chinese than freeing Abrego Garcia, the wife-beater, trafficker, and M13 gang member. I should say partner abuser. Wasn't married when he socked the crap out of his now wife.
Yeah. Well, I think it was more just a PR stunt anyway, but the congressman going down to El Salvador to make spectacle of Abrego Garcia.
You are, though. I'm down here in El Salvador telling the El Salvadorans what they have to do according to my laws, not theirs. I'm on their soil, and I'm trying to bring back or force them to give up a domestic abuser, a trafficker, a guy who was speeding at high speed, broke our laws illegally in the United States, and gang member.
As long as they don't get the wrong press to make that message for the people, if they just get this, well, it's due process, and that's what they kept saying. It's all about due process.
It leaks out. You're driving, and some people do hear.
Yeah.
Podcasts, they hear Fox, they walk down in New York, they see the New York Post headline, they get the message that they're supporting these creepy people.
Well, Victor, we're at the end, and I'd like to read a couple of comments, and these are from YouTube. They're very short, and they're one's very nice, and the other one is just a statement on nothing to do with you. But the first one says, I'm a senior economist at my company. Don't sell yourself short, VDH. You're more intelligent than most economists and absolutely way more intelligent than any commenter. And that was from Thomas. Thank you, Thomas. That was nice.
I appreciate that. I study economics. I used to read a lot about classical economics. Almost every 19th century book written about tariffs in ancient Greece, they have a word for it, telos. And I think the other word I remember is amoibe, exchange. So they had about a 10% tariff at the port of Piraeus on all imported goods to the Athenian Empire. And I think they had a 10% at the Dardanelles, the Hellespont, for all ships leaving the grain bearing regions of the Black Sea.
All right. And this one is from Hey Liam. And I think that means hey, Liam. Anyways, I think the knife, he's talking about the Anthony killing of the other young kid. I think the knife was concealed while the killer was taunting and challenging for a confrontation.
Yes, it was.
The killer was the only one who knew a knife would be used.
Yeah.
That's a premeditated murder plan
That's a
of
good
a
point.
random victim.
But I did say that. I said I'm not sure that they would be able to
Convict him
convince
of
a
it.
jury of that.
Yeah.
But the fact that he brought a knife in and he concealed it and he went over to an environment where he knew there would be confrontation, and he knew and had pre-planned to bring that knife out because he said, don't touch me, you won't like it, or something to that effect. So he was going to bring that knife out. And that's another losing proposition. I feel that the Anthony family, in their efforts to milk the public sympathy and get money, and I guess it's up to $500,000 or $600,000, buy a new home, rent a gated community, and get this shyster as their spokesman. I don't think they understand what the mechanics are in this country, because that shyster is just spewing hatred and racism all the time and trying to turn this alleged murder. But I don't even have to say alleged. He said he killed him. He said he killed him and he stabbed him in the heart. So maybe we will find out to what degree murder he was. But my point is, it's just backfiring. And I guess what I'm trying to say in conclusion to today, if I identified as a white person, I don't think I really do. I couldn't if I wanted to. I live in a 90% Hispanic community, but I wouldn't. But if I did, and I saw a bunch of people trafficking in white supremacy all the time, white this and white that, I would get very angry that they were speaking in my name because they were a minority. So what's happening to the African American community are two things. On the grassroots level, when these grassroots groups in Chicago, they want to get rid of these illegal aliens that are tormenting them and crowding over their social service, they are getting more conservative. And black men are thinking independently of the Democratic Party to 23 or 20%. So there is a liberalization of the black community politically. At the same time this is happening, the left-wing elite is going crazy, maybe in reaction to that, but I'm talking about what Jasmine Crockett says. I'm talking about Letitia James says. I'm talking about Fannie Willis says. I'm talking about what the Anthony spokesman says. I'm talking about what Jussie Smollett says. It's hatred. And it's white this, Professor Kendi. It's Ta-Nehisi Coates, I didn't feel much on 9/11, all that stuff. So it's tragic because I would get really angry because all they're doing is polarizing people, and they're not the official face of black America, but they think they are. And somebody in the black community, and I think a lot of black Democrats, conservatives especially, are saying these people don't speak to anybody but themselves. But they always talk about race. Crockett always tries to bait people, and so did the Squad and the guy that pulled the fire alarm. He lost, thank God. Bowman,
yeah.
Yeah, he was a racial bigot, and these people make Al Sharpton look kind of normal. I mean, Al Sharpton was a racist bigot in my 20s and 30s when I would listen to him, but these people are crazy. And the reparations movement and everything, I just feel like it's so sad. I mean, they got all these brilliant people like Tom Sowell. And think about, I was at the Hoover Institution, and I think that for the first 15 years, the only people I kind of talked to were black. They were Chiron Skinner and Shelby Steele and Tom Sowell, and there was Condi Rice, and she's our director. But the point is that if you were to say who were the stars of the Hoover Institution, you would kind of name those names, and they had no special help or anything. I mean, they were all meritocratic, and they competed on they were all confident, empowered people that were very educated, and they widely read, and they were kind of like the vanguard of the Black intellectual or leadership community. And I don't see that younger generation emulating their example, at least the people in the Democratic Party.
If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss any of our latest content.